Yo, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Canon review. Today we are picking things right back up where we left them. We have Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. It's directed by Irvin Kershner, who is probably my favorite Star Wars director. He only directed one project, but to me, this may just be the best one of all. Let's start with the fact that this is a sequel that expands upon the first with new planets, a new direction, better direction, I might add. The story also includes new and remarkable characters like Boba Fett, the Emperor, who I believe was referred to in the previous movie, but we never really saw him until this episode, Lando Calrissian, and Yoda, the Jedi Master. The visuals are impeccable and they they hold up pretty well. We'll get into a specific part that I don't think held up as well later. The characters are separated for nearly the whole runtime, yet the plot doesn't really skip a beat. We've got the Rebel Alliance kind of convenes on this planet called Hoth, um, which is like an ice planet, and the Empire storms them. Then Luke decides he has to go. He gets like a vision from Ben, from Obi-Wan Kenobi, that tells him he has to complete his Jedi training with Master Yoda. So he goes to this planet called Dagobah, which is like a swamp planet. Again, so cool that they're just incorporating different types of atmospheres to the Star Wars world. It was very one dimensional in the first movie, and then all of a sudden we're getting introduced to like five different. Well, it's quite literally two different planets, I believe. Three different planets actually, because Leia and Han go to Bespin. Leia, Han, and Chewie and C-3PO go to Bespin, which is like a gas planet to check up with this guy named Lando, who is going to help them out because their hyperdrive basically gets destroyed during the battle fleeing the Imperials. So I will say this: the plot doesn't skip a beat, but it's definitely not like super smooth. It's very similar to the way that A New Hope was really smooth. It just wasn't like super smooth. Like I'm being very nitpicky here, but it's like the editing is still phenomenal. It's just that I always feel like you kind of dig yourself into a hole with the two plots at once thing because you're bound to lose somebody. You don't lose me. You don't lose anyone who's like really like into the movie, but anyone who kind of maybe doesn't care that much, they're going to be a little pissed. They're going to be like, "Ah, I have to keep track of two storylines at the same time." Other movies do this, but for someone who isn't really like fully attuned, kind of not being able to have that one like main plot to kind of hook onto can be difficult. It's not really an issue with the movie. It's just a thing I'd like to point out. Once again, Kershner is better than George Lucas, at least in terms of directing a Star Wars movie. That is my opinion. My biggest nitpick, which goes back to the visuals of the movie, or that special editions do nothing for the holograms. In the battle on Hoth, we see a hologram with Darth Vader kind of just standing there, and it looks so bad. And if we look into the context of the whole series later on, you'll see there's holograms in Episode 1, Episode 2, Episode 3. They take place after Episode 5, and they look way cleaner. And it's special edition. You have the ability to go back and use better VFX. Why don't you do it? It's my biggest nitpick about the movie, but it definitely kind of hurts it a little bit in terms of visuals. Um, Luke ends up going to save his friends on Bespin, much to the dismay of Master Yoda and Master Kenobi in ghost form. He fights Darth Vader. Darth Vader reveals to him that he is his father. It's the biggest plot twist probably of all time. And the lightsaber fight is much more brilliant than the first one. The first one was Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. They battled, and it just was kind of lame. Even now watching it's lame. It's not awful. It's not the worst saber duel in Star Wars, I'm sure. It's probably the worst right now, but it's not the worst when we get to all of them. But the Luke Vader fight in Episode 5 is so much crisper. It's so much cleaner. The choreography is a lot better, and they do a good job of really putting a lot of emotion into it too, which is something that is hard to do with lightsaber fights. I feel like we'll get into some later on that really don't have a lot of emotion to them, but these do, which is splendid. And I also want to mention, sound effects, the top notch. Um, the sound of the Tie Fighters, but also there's plenty of space battles in this one. It's not as prominent as in Episode 4, but there's a lot of space battles, especially when they're fleeing to go to Hoth. Even during Hoth when they're fighting the AT-ATs and they're in their snow speeders, and you hear all of this like noise, and it's so brilliant because it's like these ships don't even make the noise you would expect them to. They just kind of make like a weird like guttural sound, but it just sounds so clean. The blaster fire, it sounds so real. It's awesome. I could go on and on about the movie sound effects. Um, the movie is possibly better than A New Hope. It really just depends on my mood. I think if I was to do a tier list, it would probably be first, but it is basically the same as A New Hope in terms of how much I like it. It's a perfect one-two punch. I'll tell you that much. The best part of the movie is John Williams. He is the composer. He is the guy who makes all the music for Star Wars. He provides an even tastier score with tracks like the Imperial March, which becomes a mainstay in the franchise. But it sounds so good, and the fact that it's just not in the first movie is something as a kid I never really noticed. And then obviously now I know obviously it originated in The Empire Strikes Back, and it just sounds it's such a great score. I honestly cannot believe that it wasn't in the first movie, but they they do a good job of like expanding on the kind of like eerie tone that they have during episode 4 with when they show the Imperials. They didn't make it like a really big theme in episode 5. And I love that. It's just a nice addition to the franchise that you kind of grow to appreciate and you think it's always been there and it hasn't. My overall rating of the movie is, as I'm sure you probably guessed based on my other comments, a 9.8 out of 10, which will be an A plus, which means that the error ratings for Age of Rebellion stay at 9.8 out of 10. Because 9.8 plus 9.8 divided by 2 is 9.8. Um, real quick, want to mention that the ending of this movie is sad, and it's something that Star Wars likes to do sometimes. They like to make sad endings, and it always means that there is more to the story, which is cool because yeah, there's at least one more movie that we're gonna be reviewing, and if you know Star Wars at all, you know there's more like 9 more. So there's a lot of Star Wars films. They kind of just didn't stop making them, and they won't probably ever, which is a good thing, but also I think for some people maybe a bad thing. But we'll talk about if it's a good or bad thing next time. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, comment down below your thoughts on The Empire Strikes Back. I'm sure you have many. It's a very popular movie. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.